seemed like the score was pretty constant. Are there any moments that are not scored?
We're very selective about that, and with Beck's Beginning, since it's so fast-paced and it's a really straightforward background of getting us in between the movies, getting us to understand how the movies relate to the show, it's really kind of hard-hitting. So we don't have too much non-musical moments in Beck's Beginning. When we get into the show, starting on June 7th, when the show starts, we do find a few more moments of pause, but the music is still quite continuous otherwise. Yeah.
Did you opt for more of a Daft Punk influence than the Journey sound of the 1980s?
Or the Wendy Carlos,
yeah.
Since we're coming directly on the heels of Tron Legacy, we wanted to keep it in that world. However, that being said, once we get into the show, we're actually we can take the story in so many more directions just because of the amount of time we have. The amount of time we have about 18 episodes ahead of us to develop these characters, and we're actually bringing in some more Wendy Carlos influence and sounds. We're kind of going a little bit more out there. We get to go a little bit farther.
Are different characters going to have different themes for their character moments?
Yes, they do. Already in Beck's Beginning, we're starting to establish what Beck's hero sound is, what his hero theme is, and the texture of that, whether it's horns or guitar. And then Tesla, of course, whenever he's kind of anywhere to be seen, or even just to be felt, we have this dark, brooding thing going on. And then Paige even has, when she arrives, she has a certain texture that she carries with her. So musically, we're kind of, it's a little bit old school in that sense. So we have this kind of a slightly updated leitmotif type of thing going on that you might be familiar with if you pay attention to John Williams scores, even back to Wagner operatic scores, stuff like that.
Now, with the themes from the movie very much highly present in Beck's Beginning, did you try to keep the stuff related to some of the themes that we heard in the Tron Legacy movie, or as we go on, do we hear a lot more original stuff?
The plan has been to take certain elements from the film and really adapt them to what we're doing. And the most important thing in Beck's Beginning was to immediately connect the audience with something relatable. Even starting in Beck's Beginning and then continuing in the show, we're slowly opening our musical palette to encompass all sorts of different ideas, just like the show is going to eventually take us into all sorts of places where we develop the rules of the grid and how the grid operates more so than the films.
Was it easier to compose music for something that's already established? So it's an established story, there are movies behind it. Was it easier for you?
They both have their challenges, because if it's something that isn't established, obviously it's almost like a blank slate in that way, and it's kind of a little scary to approach the blank slate. But then on the opposite end, with something like Tron, I have to not think about it because Tron has been around now for almost 30 years. Actually, this is the 30th anniversary of Tron. So if you think about it that way, it has this huge history of great music, great acting, great, stuff like that. And if you think about that too much, it starts to weigh you down. So they both have really big challenges.
Will any of the music from Tron Uprising end up being released on CD or iTunes?
We hope so. There are no plans right now, but the goal has always been, my goal has always been to create a score that connects with the audience, but in a very visceral way. I never want people to really just sit there just to listen to the music because I want to help convey the story. That's the most important. But if the story really connects with people and they kind of remember the music a little bit in the back of their head, I think we have a strong chance of having a release. So get all the fans out there to ask for it.
How much time did you have to compose this recording?
Well, episode to episode, we have about 2 weeks, which is a little generous for TV, but also given how complex the music is, how dense it actually is a very short period of time. But that being said, a lot of the groundwork was set even before the film came out. I was called in to begin working on the show. So we were starting to experiment with textures and sound ideas and thematic ideas. So a lot of time went into research and development. So that 2 weeks spent scoring an episode is not as crazy as it would be if we were trying to reinvent the wheel every 2 weeks. Luckily, we've spent a lot of time putting in a lot of thought and research into the sound that we've come up for the show.
Now, you helped with the music for the movie.
Mhm.
Now, was there any music that didn't make it into the movie that you're trying to insert into the series?
No, as of right now, we are keeping Tron Uprising 100% new score. There's been some talk about some unused stuff, but really the thing is we're trying to reserve. What we did on Tron Legacy, it was such an honor for me to be involved in that, and will always be a highlight for me career-wise. But that was so special that and we all really want to let that kind of live on its own. Obviously, we're still hearkening back to it with what we do, but we kind of want to let that live on its own. But that being said, if we do ever wind up using that sort of thing, it's going to have to be a special moment. So we'll see. Maybe it's our ace in the hole. So to speak.
Having worked on both, is the approach different at all between animation and live action?
Much so.
How do you sort of just creatively kind of tackle it differently?
Much so. Animation. You have to work a little bit harder to pull the audience in, because for live action, you're seeing human beings on the screen. And maybe on a beach or wherever in a building or something. It's very tactile. It's very familiar to us. But first of all, with animation, this is usually an unfamiliar world. Obviously, animated people, you don't maybe connect to them as immediately. Luckily, we have an amazing voice cast, so that certainly helps. It's really fantastic acting on that end, helps us connect. But then, furthermore, we're inside a computer. We're in the grid. How do you relate to that? So musically, we have to be a little bit more active, a little bit more on the nose when it comes to hitting things and pulling emotion out.
How complete are the episodes when you compose the music for them?
It depends. Some episodes are more complete than others. They're usually on their first or second pass. But that being said, I think the amount of time from start to beginning on one episode is something like 8 months. So by the time I get it, we're already 6 months or so into that. So I'm already being pretty spoiled. When we started the show, though, all I was seeing was hand-drawn animation. It's really fantastic.
Are there any cues that you can? I hate to say reuse from episode to episode, but would that make
No,
sense?
yeah, we do that all the time. Very subtly. The thing is, it's like your favorite song. If you turn on your favorite song in the car, you're gonna remember. Oh, I remember that day I first heard this. I was dating this girl, and we went to the beach, and whatever. Much the same when we are able to put in a piece of score that might be a little bit more iconic than others that was from an older episode. So as an audience member, it's kind of like a little button you could push. You can kind of immediately tap into their emotions a little bit deeper than if it's something completely unfamiliar. So it's something that we do, but we also try to use it very wisely. Very wisely.
Are there certain sounds or instruments that you avoid using with Tron Uprising just because they don't fit that world?
Yeah, what's really interesting is that we don't really have any rules on this one that are like, no, don't ever use this. For instance, on the newest episode that I'm working on right now, we're actually adding some choral elements. But that being said, though, there's a very strong reason for that in the story, which you'll have to wait on. But everything that we do musically is determined by the show. And what's interesting about the show is because we're now exploring the Tron world even a little bit more deeper, is that we can musically go a little bit deeper. We're using electric guitar now to kind of convey that youthful sense that our hero has, more so than in the film. So it's been really exciting to be able to to all of a sudden go out and pull on some strings that we couldn't pull on before.
When you do get back to the Wendy Carlos influence, might we hear the do?
No, not yet anyway.
No?
No, not yet. It's interesting because if there was a time to hear that, I would be open to it. But right now that theme. The thing is too, a lot of it you need to really. You don't want to pull on those things to. You don't want to overuse them because they're so strong. That theme is so strong and immediately harkens back to that original movie that I would never want to use that unless there was a strong reason to do so. And maybe there will be in an upcoming episode. We'll see.
You knew what it was before I finished it.
Exactly. I could have finished it for you.
So I'm curious about what inspires you on a daily basis. Are there elements in movies, music, TV, anything?
Definitely. I'm a huge fan of filmmaking in general as an artist. So a lot of times when I go to a movie, and one of the things I'm not thinking, I try to think about as little as possible as the music, because that's what I always think about. So I try to look at the way the camera's moving, how scenes are being lit, how wide the shots are. And so what tends to happen then is when I'm looking at Tron Uprising and I'm seeing Charlie's shot this in a way that's so beautiful, that's so unique. He shot this in a very cinematic way. So a lot of the camera movements, even though this is an animated series, a lot of the camera movements are coming from the film world. So immediately I'm getting information on like, okay, so they shot this at a wide angle so that we could, so they could convey this emotion that there's a huge battle happening now, or oh, they've shot this really close up on Beck to convey the emotion that he's experiencing. Even though he's in a fight right now, they're using this tight shot of his face to show how he's nervous or something like that. So I'm trying to really tune into moment to moment what choices the filmmakers are making, so that influences the choices I make.
We have time for one more question.
Now, we've been seeing a kind of creep in terms of, for filmmaking, the scores have always been big for movies and whatnot, but now for TV shows and even animated series, we've been seeing, a lot more, fully orchestrated scores instead of revisiting themes. Would you say that's better or worse for?
I'd say that's great. I'm a big fan of engulfing the audience into a story. And everyone has a 3D TV now, or an LCD TV or something, and everyone has a hi-fi system. We're mixing the score in surround sound, and so I'm very honored to be part of something that, if you watch this series, it's almost like it was meant to be seen in the theater in some regards. That it's so immersive, and I think that's great. To be able to bring that level, that quality of work into someone's home is fantastic.